The morning air on Kepler 9 station felt cold against Laura Bennett's skin. She stood perfectly still in the main training hall, her boots locked together, her spine straight as steel. Around her, 200 cadets from across the galaxy formed neat rows. Some had scales that shimmered under the bright lights. Others had fur that moved with each breath. A few had skin like metal or stone. Laura was human. One of only 30 humans in the entire academy. Earth had joined the Galactic Defense Force just 3 years ago, and everyone still watched the human cadets carefully, watching to see if they would succeed or fail. General Krasthar walked slowly down the line of cadets. His footsteps were heavy and loud. Each step made a clicking sound on the metal floor. He was Thoraxian, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with a body covered in thick plates of natural armor. His 4 arms hung at his sides, and his compound eyes could see in almost every direction at once. The general stopped in front of a Quilarian cadet. He adjusted the cadet's belt without a word. The Quilarian's long neck dipped in acknowledgement. The general moved on. Laura had been at the academy for 8 months. Back home in Manchester, she had learned to fight early. The streets near her flat were rough, and being a girl meant some boys thought she was weak. Her older brother taught her to box in their tiny garage. Fast hands, faster feet, and never let them see you scared. Later, when she joined the Royal Marines, they made those skills sharper. More controlled. More dangerous. General Krasthar stopped directly in front of her. His compound eyes studied her uniform. Laura kept her gaze forward, not meeting his eyes. That was proper military protocol. Show respect to superior officers. She had polished her boots until they gleamed. Her uniform had been pressed twice. Everything was perfect. Except it wasn't. The general's primary hand shot forward and touched her collar. There was a loose thread. Barely visible. Maybe half an inch long. Laura had not noticed it that morning in the dim light of her quarters. Unacceptable, the general said. His voice sounded like gravel scraping against metal. Before Laura could respond, his hand moved in a blur. The slap connected with her left cheek with tremendous force. Her head snapped to the side. Pain exploded across her face. Her vision blurred for a moment. In Thoraxian culture, this was normal. A physical correction to teach attention to detail. A reminder that small mistakes in combat could mean death. The general had done this hundreds of times to hundreds of cadets. Most species understood this tradition. Most accepted it as part of military discipline. But Laura Bennett was not most cadets. Her body moved before her mind could catch up. 20 years of training took control. The slap had triggered something deep in her nervous system. Threat. Defend. Her left hand came up and caught his wrist as he pulled it back. Her fingers locked around the thinnest part of his armored forearm. Her right hand joined it, gripping with precision. She stepped to the side, dropping her weight and turning her hips. The movement was smooth and practiced. Countless hours on the training mats back on Earth had made it automatic. General Krasthar's eyes widened in surprise. No cadet had ever grabbed him before. No one had dared. Laura rotated his wrist outward, applying pressure to the joint. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, this was called a wrist lock. It worked the same way on humans, on training dummies, and apparently on Thoraxians. She increased the torque, feeling the resistance of his natural armor. 1 second had passed. The general tried to pull away, but Laura had already taken his balance. She stepped deeper, keeping her center of gravity low. Her instructors back on Earth had drilled this into her thousands of times. Control the wrist, control the body. Control the body, control the fight. 2 seconds had passed. The general's other 3 arms began to move, reaching for her. But Laura was already transitioning. She twisted his wrist harder, forcing him to bend forward or risk serious injury. His massive body began to tilt as his own strength worked against him. 3 seconds had passed. Laura completed the lock, hyperextending his wrist joint past its natural range. She heard a sharp crack as the chitinous exoskeleton around his wrist fractured. The sound was loud in the silent hall. Like breaking a thick branch. 4 seconds had passed. General Krasthar dropped to one knee with a grunt of pain. His hand was trapped, immobilized, useless. His compound eyes stared at Laura with an expression she could not read. Shock? Anger? Something else? Laura suddenly realized what she had done. She released his wrist immediately and stepped back, snapping to attention. Her heart hammered in her chest. Her cheeks still burned from the slap. Around her, every single cadet stood frozen, staring at the scene before them. A human cadet had just broken a general's wrist. The general rose slowly to his feet. He cradled his injured wrist with his other hands. Green fluid seeped from the cracks in his exoskeleton. He looked at Laura for a long moment. The entire hall was silent except for the hum of the station's life support systems. "Remain here," the general said quietly. He turned and walked toward the exit. His steps were uneven now, favoring his injured limb. 2 security drones detached from the ceiling and floated down toward Laura. Their scanners painted her with blue light. The cadet next to Laura, a Drachner named Sethys with 4 eyes and bronze scales, whispered from the corner of his mouth. "You are in serious trouble, human?" Laura said nothing. She kept her eyes forward. But inside her mind raced. She had just assaulted a superior officer. In any military in the galaxy, that meant court-martial. That meant prison. That meant the end of her career before it had even begun. The security drones hovered closer. "Cadet Bennett, you will come with us." Laura nodded once. She broke formation and walked toward the exit, the drones flanking her on both sides. Behind her, she could hear the whispers starting. Hundreds of voices in dozens of languages, all talking about what they had just witnessed. The human who broke the general's wrist in 4 seconds. As she walked down the corridor toward the detention level, Laura's hands were steady. Her breathing was calm. She had defended herself. That was what her training had taught her. That was what her instincts had demanded. But she also knew that instincts did not matter much in a court-martial. The detention cell door slid open with a hiss. Laura walked inside. The door closed behind her with a heavy thud. And she waited. The holding cell was small and gray. Laura sat on the metal bench bolted to the wall, staring at her hands. They had not shaken during the incident. They did not shake now. But her mind would not stop replaying those 4 seconds over and over again. The door opened with a soft hiss. Commander Velith entered, carrying a data pad. She was Quilarian, tall and slender with pale blue skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Her species was known for diplomacy and fairness. They rarely took sides in conflicts. "Cadet Bennett," Velith said, her voice gentle. "I need to ask you some questions." Laura stood at attention immediately. "Yes, Commander." "Sit please. This is not an interrogation." "Not yet." Velith took a seat across from her, folding her long legs gracefully. "Tell me what happened in your own words." Laura took a breath. "General Krasthar struck me during inspection. My training responded automatically. I defended myself using a wrist lock technique. I released him as soon as I realized what I had done." Velith made notes on her data pad. "Did you intend to injure the general?" "No, Commander. It was reflex. In human combat training, we learn to respond to sudden violence without thinking. The body moves before the mind can process." "I see." Velith studied her for a moment. "Did you know that Thraxian military culture uses physical corrections as standard teaching method?" Laura hesitated. "I had heard rumors, Commander. But on Earth, striking someone, especially a subordinate, is illegal. It is assault. We learned that authority figures who use violence are threats." Velith nodded slowly. She tapped her data pad, pulling up files. "I have been interviewing other cadets. 3 other humans reported being struck by Thraxian instructors in the past 2 months. They said nothing because they feared creating an incident." Laura's jaw tightened. "They were hurt. Minor injuries. Bruises mostly. 1 concussion that was listed as a training accident." Velith looked directly at Laura. "Your response may have prevented worse situations. Or it may have created a diplomatic disaster. I have not yet decided which." The commander stood and paced slowly. "General Krasthar has filed formal charges. Assault on a superior officer during peacetime. The maximum sentence is 15 years in a military prison." Laura felt her stomach drop. 15 years. Her life would be over before it began. "However," Velith continued, "the Thraxian delegation is confused. In their culture, you defending yourself shows warrior spirit. General Krasthar actually respects what you did. He told me your technique was impressive. But military law is military law. He must press charges to maintain discipline." "I understand, Commander." Velith stopped pacing and looked at Laura directly. "Do you?" "Because I am not sure anyone understands what is happening here. Earth is new to the Galactic Defense Force. Your species is still learning our ways. But we are also learning yours. And sometimes those ways conflict in unexpected patterns." Over the next 3 days, Laura remained in her cell. Meals came through a slot in the door. She exercised in the small space, doing push-ups and squats to keep her mind occupied. Sleep came in brief patches. On the 4th day, Velith returned. This time she was smiling slightly. "I have found something interesting in the Academy Charter," she said, pulling up a document on her data pad. Section 12, Paragraph 9. It states that the Academy must provide mutual cultural accommodation for all member species. But the implementation guidelines were never written for human-specific situations. What does that mean, Commander? It means that striking a human cadet could be interpreted as violating Earth's cultural standards, just as your response violated Thraxian standards. Both actions were culturally appropriate within each species' framework. Both were violations within the other's framework. Laura frowned. So we are both guilty? Or both innocent, depending on perspective. Velith sat down again. The tribunal convenes tomorrow. 5 judges from 5 different species will hear the case. This decision will set precedent for how humans integrate into galactic military structure. No pressure. That night, Laura barely slept. She thought about her family back in Manchester. Her mum working double shifts at the hospital. Her brother who had taught her to fight to protect herself. They had been so proud when she was accepted to the academy. The first person from their neighborhood to go off-world. Now she might come home in disgrace. The tribunal room was massive. High ceilings, polished floors, and a viewing gallery packed with cadets from every species. Laura entered in her dress uniform, flanked by 2 security officers. She saw General Krosthar sitting on the opposite side of the room. His wrist was in a regeneration cast that glowed faintly green. The 5 judges entered. A Thraxian, a Quilarian, a human, a Drachner, and a species Laura did not recognize with crystalline skin that refracted light into rainbow patterns. The Thraxian judge spoke first. This tribunal will determine if Cadet Laura Bennett violated military code by assaulting General Krosthar. We will also examine if proper protocols were followed during the incident. The prosecution began. A Thraxian advocate stood and argued that military hierarchy required absolute respect. Laura had volunteered for service. She knew the rules. She must accept consequences. The advocate showed footage of the incident from multiple security cameras. 4 seconds. Deflect, grip, rotate, crack. Then the defense spoke. A human advocate demonstrated the force of a Thraxian discipline strike using pressure sensors. On human physiology, such impacts caused concussions, broken bones, internal bleeding. Laura's response was proportional self-defense under Earth law. Commander Velith took the stand and presented her findings. The cultural clash. The lack of proper guidelines. The other human cadets who had been struck and said nothing. Then General Krosthar was called to testify. He stood slowly, his massive form dominating the room. I struck Cadet Bennett to correct a uniform violation. This is standard practice in Thraxian military culture. I did not intend permanent harm. The human judge leaned forward. Were you aware that such physical contact is illegal on Earth? I was not. I assumed all species understood military discipline requires physical corrections. And now, after having your wrist broken? General Krosthar looked directly at Laura. Now I am fascinated. Cadet Bennett used leverage and technique to defeat my natural advantages. My species relies on armor and strength. Her method neutralized both completely. I wish to understand human combat philosophy better. I believe we can learn from each other. The room erupted in whispers. Judges called for silence. The crystalline judge spoke, her voice like wind chimes. General Krosthar, are you requesting leniency for the cadet? I am requesting something different. A cultural exchange program. Cadet Bennett teaches human defensive tactics. I teach Thraxian strategic doctrine. We bridge the gap between our species through shared knowledge rather than punishment. Laura stared at the general in shock. He was offering her a way out. More than that, he was offering respect. The judges conferred quietly for nearly an hour. Finally, they returned to their seats. The human judge spoke. The tribunal finds that both parties acted according to their cultural training. We reduce charges to cultural misunderstanding. Cadet Bennett receives formal reprimand but no dismissal. The Academy must immediately implement proper cross-species cultural protocols. General Krosthar's exchange program proposal is approved. Laura felt her knees go weak with relief. Not guilty. Not exactly innocent either, but not guilty. As she left the tribunal room, General Krosthar approached her. He extended his uninjured hand carefully. You have good technique, Cadet Bennett. I look forward to learning from you. Laura shook his hand gently, mindful of his injury. And I from you, General. She walked out into the corridor where her fellow human cadets waited. They crowded around her, relief and joy on their faces. For the first time in days, Laura smiled. The incident was over. But something new was beginning. The tribunal chamber filled slowly as dawn broke over Kepler 9 station. Laura stood in the defendant's area, her hands clasped behind her back. She wore her formal dress uniform, every button polished, every crease perfect. If this was the end of her career, she would face it with dignity. The gallery above held hundreds of spectators. Human cadets sat together in one section, their faces tense. Thraxian officers occupied another section, their chitinous armor gleaming under the lights. Representatives from Earth's government sat near the front. So did members of the Thraxian High Command. This trial had grown far beyond one cadet and one general. Laura's advocate, a human lawyer named Patricia Cole, sat beside her reviewing notes. Patricia had arrived from Earth 2 days ago, sent by the government itself. That told Laura how serious this had become. "Remember," Patricia whispered, "answer only what they ask. Do not volunteer extra information. Stay calm." Laura nodded. Her heart beat steadily in her chest. Fear was there, but it was controlled. Manageable. The 5 judges entered through a side door. The Thraxian judge was named Vrextal, his armor decorated with medals from decades of service. The Quilarian judge was Commander Velith, who had investigated the case. The human judge was Admiral Chin, a stern woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled back tight. The Drachner judge had bronze scales and 4 intelligent eyes. The crystalline judge moved with careful grace, her body refracting light into rainbow patterns. Admiral Chin spoke first. "This tribunal is now in session. We are here to determine the facts of the incident between Cadet Laura Bennett and General Krasthar, and to decide appropriate consequences. Let the record show that representatives from both Earth and the Thraxian Empire are present." A Thraxian advocate rose from the prosecution table. His name was Thexvor, and his voice boomed across the chamber. "Honored judges, the facts are simple. Cadet Bennett assaulted a superior officer without provocation. She broke General Krasthar's wrist during a routine inspection. Military discipline requires consequences for such actions. We request maximum penalty under Galactic Military Code." Patricia stood immediately. "Objection. The prosecution claims no provocation. The general struck Cadet Bennett across the face with significant force. Security footage will show this clearly." Judge Vrextal made a clicking sound. "The court acknowledges both actions occurred. We will examine context and intent. Proceed." The prosecution called its first witness. A Thraxian captain testified about military tradition. Physical corrections were ancient practice, he explained. They built character and attention to detail. Thousands of cadets across hundreds of years had received such corrections without incident. "Has any cadet ever responded with violence?" Patricia asked during cross-examination. The captain's compound eyes flickered. "No. It would be unthinkable." "Why?" "Because striking a superior officer violates the most basic military principle. Obedience to the chain of command." Patricia nodded. "And yet, in human military forces, striking a subordinate violates our most basic principle. Protection of those under your command." Murmurs spread through the gallery. Judge Chin called for silence. The prosecution then showed the security footage. Multiple angles captured the incident. General Krasthar's inspection. The loose thread. The slap that snapped Laura's head to the side. Then her response. So fast it was hard to follow even in slow motion. Deflect, grip, rotate, control. The crack of breaking chitin was audible on the recording. Laura watched herself on the screen. For seconds that changed everything. The defense called Commander Velith to testify. She explained her investigation findings. 3 other human cadets had been struck by Thraxian instructors. One suffered a concussion. None reported it because they feared diplomatic consequences. "I also discovered," Velith continued, "that human bone structure is significantly more fragile than Thraxian exoskeleton. A correction strike that causes minor discomfort to a Thraxian can cause serious injury to a human. The force levels were never calibrated for human physiology." This caused more murmurs in the gallery. The Earth representatives leaned forward, faces grim. Patricia called a medical expert next. A human doctor testified about the biomechanics of the general's slap. She showed simulations of the impact force. On a Thraxian it would barely register. On a human skull it could cause brain trauma. Cadet Bennett's cheekbone showed microfractures, the doctor stated. Another inch higher and her orbital bone might have shattered. Judge Vrextal's mandibles clicked together thoughtfully. "You are saying the general's action was more dangerous than he intended?" "Precisely. General Krasthar would not deliberately cause such injury. but the result could have been severe due to biological differences. Then it was Laura's turn to testify. She walked to the witness stand with steady steps. Patricia asked her to describe her background. Laura explained her upbringing in Manchester, learning to box from her brother, joining the Royal Marines, training in defensive tactics. When General Crosthar struck you, what went through your mind? Patricia asked. Nothing went through my mind, Laura said honestly. My body reacted before I could think. 20 years of training took over. When someone in authority strikes you suddenly on Earth, it signals danger. Real danger. My nervous system responded to a threat. Did you intend to break his wrist? No. I intended to control the threat and create distance. The technique I used is designed to immobilize, not injure. But Thoraxian exoskeleton must have different breaking points than human bones. I miscalculated the pressure needed. The Thoraxian advocate stood for cross-examination. You claim this was reflex. But you are trained military personnel. Should you not have better control? Laura met his eyes. Sir, reflexes exist because thinking takes too long. Combat happens in fractions of seconds. If I had stopped to think about cultural implications, I would have been hit again. Maybe harder. My training saved me from worse injury. Or your training made you dangerous and unsuitable for integrated military service. Patricia objected immediately. The prosecution is making statements, not asking questions. Judge Chin sustained the objection. The final witness was General Crosthar himself. The gallery fell completely silent as he approached the stand. His injured wrist was still in its regeneration cast. He moved with careful dignity. Admiral Chin spoke directly to him. General, you are the victim in this case. What outcome do you seek? The general was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his gravelly voice carrying across the chamber. I have commanded troops for 40 years. I have trained thousands of soldiers from dozens of species. I believed I understood military discipline. He paused. Cadet Bennett taught me I was wrong. Shocked whispers rippled through the crowd. Her response was not insubordination. It was survival instinct shaped by her culture's values. My action was not malicious. It was teaching method shaped by my culture's values. We were both right. We were both wrong. And that is the problem. The general turned to face Laura directly. I do not want this cadet punished. I want to learn from her. I want her to learn from me. I formally request this tribunal approve a cultural exchange program. She teaches human combat philosophy to interested cadets and officers. I teach Thoraxian strategic doctrine to human personnel. We build understanding instead of creating division. The chamber erupted. Earth representatives looked stunned. Thoraxian officers clicked their mandibles in what might have been approval or confusion. Cadets in the gallery began talking over each other. Judge Chin banged her gavel repeatedly. Order. This tribunal will have order. It took several minutes for silence to return. The 5 judges conferred privately for over an hour. Laura stood at attention the entire time, her legs steady despite her racing thoughts. Patricia squeezed her shoulder once in silent support. Finally, the judges returned. Judge Chin stood. This tribunal has reached a decision. We find that Cadet Laura Bennett acted in accordance with her species' cultural training and self-defense protocols. We also find that General Crosthar acted in accordance with Thoraxian cultural teaching methods. However, the intersection of these two cultural frameworks created a dangerous situation that must be addressed. She paused, looking at both Laura and the general. The charges of assault are reduced to cultural misunderstanding. Cadet Bennett will receive a formal reprimand on her record but no further punishment. She will not be dismissed from the academy. General Crosthar's proposal for cultural exchange is approved and mandated. The academy must immediately implement comprehensive cross-species cultural protocols to prevent future incidents. Laura felt tears prick at her eyes but held them back. Not guilty. She could stay. Judge Vrextal spoke next. Let this case serve as lesson. Integration of new species into galactic military structure requires more than good intentions. It requires deep understanding of biological and cultural differences. This tribunal orders all training facilities to review their protocols within 30 days. The gavel fell with a sharp crack. This tribunal is adjourned. Laura turned to Patricia, who was smiling broadly. You did it. You stayed calm and told the truth. General Crosthar approached slowly. He extended his good hand. Laura shook it carefully, remembering how easily his exoskeleton had fractured. We begin training next week, Cadet Bennett. I look forward to it. As do I, General. As Laura left the tribunal chamber, her fellow human cadets surrounded her. They cheered and clapped her on the back. But Laura noticed something else too. Thraxian cadets nodded to her as she passed. Quilarian cadets bowed slightly in respect. Even the Drachner cadets, usually aloof, watched her with new interest. She had not just won her trial. She had opened a door. Now she had to prove that what lay beyond it was worth the cost. The training hall on Deck 7 had been converted into something new. Mats covered the floor, borrowed from the human recreation area. Holographic displays lined the walls, ready to show technique demonstrations. Chairs sat in a semicircle, adjusted for different species body types. Some were tall, some wide, some had extra support for tails or additional limbs. Laura stood at the front of the room, her stomach tight with nerves. This was her first official class. 16 cadets had volunteered. 7 Thraxians for humans, 3 Quilarians and 2 Drachner. They watched her with varying expressions of curiosity and skepticism. General Krasthar sat in the back row, his regenerated wrist fully healed now. He had insisted on attending as a student, not an observer. His presence made Laura even more nervous. "Good morning," Laura began. Her voice sounded small in the large space. She cleared her throat and tried again, louder this time. "Thank you all for volunteering. This program is new for everyone. I am learning just as much as you are." A Thraxian cadet in the front row clicked his mandibles. "We are here to learn the technique you used on the general. The wrist break." Laura shook her head. "That is not what this class is about. I'm not here to teach you how to break bones. I am here to teach you how to think differently about combat." She gestured to the mats. "In human martial arts, we focus on principles, not just techniques. Leverage, momentum, balance, awareness. These work regardless of your body type or your opponent's strength." A Quilarian cadet raised a slender hand. "But our bodies are very different. Thraxians have exoskeletons. Drachner have 4 arms. My species has joints that bend in ways yours cannot. How can the same principles work for all of us?" "Good question," Laura said. She had been preparing for this all week. "Let me show you something." She called up a holographic display. It showed a simple lever. A bar balanced on a fulcrum with weight on one end. "This is leverage. It works the same way everywhere in the universe. If I know where the fulcrum is, I can move massive weight with small force. In combat, your opponent's joints are the fulcrums. It does not matter if you have 2 arms or 4. The physics are the same." She demonstrated on one of the Drachner cadets, a young female named Tessa. "May I use you for demonstration?" Tessa nodded and stepped forward. She was shorter than Laura but had 4 arms covered in bronze scales. "Grab my wrist," Laura instructed. Tessa gripped Laura's wrist with 2 of her hands. Her grip was incredibly strong. Laura felt the pressure but did not resist it. "If I try to pull away using strength, Tessa wins. She is stronger than me." Laura pulled against the grip. Nothing happened. "But if I understand leverage." Laura rotated her wrist in a small circle, found the weak point in Tessa's grip, and slipped free easily. Tessa looked at her own hands in surprise. "You did not fight my strength. You found the gap in it," Tessa said slowly. "Exactly. Every grip has a weak point. Every stance has a moment of imbalance. Combat is not about being stronger. It is about being smarter." Over the next hour, Laura walked them through basic concepts. She paired cadets together, mixing species. A Thraxian worked with a human. A Quilarian partnered with a Drachner. She taught them to feel for balance points, to recognize moments of vulnerability, to use their opponent's momentum against them. It was messy at first. The Thraxian accidentally knocked his human partner down with too much force. The Quilarian's flexible joints made standard grip techniques useless. The Drachner kept forgetting to use only 2 arms at a time for the basic drills. But slowly, understanding began to grow. A Thraxian cadet named Vex managed to off-balance his partner by gently pulling instead of pushing. His compound eyes widened in surprise. "It worked. I barely used any force." "Because you used his force," Laura explained. "When he pushed, you pulled. You added to his momentum instead of fighting against it." General Krasthar observed everything silently. When the class ended, he approached Laura as the other cadets filed out. "You teach well," he said. "You make complex ideas simple. That is a gift." "Thank you, General. Though I have much to learn about teaching different species." "We all do." He gestured to the chairs. "Tomorrow I teach my class. Strategic patience. Will you attend?" "Of course, General." The next morning, Laura sat in the same training hall, now rearranged for a lecture. General Kraz there stood at the front, and a holographic star map floated above him showing vast sections of space. Humans are brilliant at adaptation, the general began. Your species learns fast, improvises well, and responds to immediate threats with impressive speed. But you have a weakness. You think in short time spans. He zoomed in on a planetary system. 30 years ago, the Thraxian Empire wanted control of this system. It had valuable minerals, but it was defended by a powerful fleet. We could have attacked directly. Many commanders suggested this. Fast victory. Decisive action. The general clicked his mandibles. We did not attack. Instead, we established trade relations. We became partners. We invested in their economy. We waited. After 28 years, they voted to join the Thraxian Empire willingly. No shots fired. No lives lost. Complete victory. Laura frowned, thinking. But 28 years is nearly half a human lifetime. Most human commanders would not wait that long. Precisely. That is your weakness and your strength. Your short lifespans make you value quick results. This makes you excellent at tactical situations. But it makes you poor at strategic planning. You think in years. We think in generations. He spent the next hour showing examples. Wars won through patience. Conflicts avoided through careful long-term planning. Resources preserved through thinking decades ahead. When the class ended, Laura approached him. I think I understand. You build victory slowly like constructing a building. We try to seize victory quickly like catching something thrown at us. Yes, both approaches have value. Neither is wrong. But imagine if we combine them. Thraxian strategic patience with human tactical flexibility. We would be formidable. Over the following weeks, the program grew. More cadets volunteered. Laura's classes expanded to include situational awareness training. She taught them to read body language across species, to recognize pre-attack indicators, to create safe distance without aggression. General Krasdar's classes taught long-term thinking. He showed humans how to plan operations that might take years to complete. He taught them to see battles as small parts of larger campaigns, campaigns as parts of longer wars, and wars as moments in centuries of history. The two of them began collaborating. They created joint exercises where cadets had to solve problems using both immediate action and long-term planning. A hostage situation where patience saved more lives than speed. A resource shortage where tactical thinking prevented strategic failure. Other instructors noticed the changes. Cadets who took both classes performed better in standard training. They thought more carefully. They acted more decisively. They understood that combat was not just about fighting but about knowing when to fight and when to wait. Commander Velith visited one of Laura's classes. She watched as a Thraxian cadet successfully controlled a Drachner opponent twice her size using leverage principles. This is impressive, Velith said afterward. I have recommended expanding the program to all academy locations. Your teaching methods should become standard curriculum. Laura felt pride swell in her chest. Thank you, Commander. Do not thank me yet. With success comes responsibility. You will need to train other instructors. The program must work without you eventually. That evening, Laura sat in the station's observation deck, watching stars stream past. General Krasdar found her there. You look thoughtful, he said, settling into a reinforced chair beside her. Commander Velith wants to expand the program. Train more instructors. Make it permanent. And this troubles you? It makes it real. What started as a way to avoid prison is now becoming something larger. What if I am not ready for that responsibility? The general was quiet for a moment. Then he pointed at the stars. Do you know what I see when I look out there? I see thousands of years of Thraxian expansion. Generations of careful planning. But I also see that we have barely explored a fraction of the galaxy. We need new ideas. New perspectives. Your species brings that. He turned to look at her. You were not ready to break my wrist. But you did it anyway because your training prepared you. Now your training will prepare others. Trust the process. Laura smiled. That sounds like strategic patience talking. Perhaps you are learning after all. 6 weeks after the program began, something remarkable happened. A Quilarian cadet used human de-escalation techniques to peacefully resolve a fight in the dining hall. 2 cadets from aggressive species had been about to come to blows over a perceived insult. The Quilarian stepped between them, created space, used calm voice tones, and helped both sides communicate their actual concerns. The fight ended before it began. Word spread quickly. If the techniques worked outside combat class, they had real value. Laura received messages from cadets she had never met. They thanked her for teaching ideas that helped them in daily life. Not just fighting but understanding. Not just techniques but principles. General Krasthar received similar messages about his strategic classes. Human cadets reported feeling less rushed, more thoughtful. They made better decisions because they considered longer time frames. One evening, Laura and the general sat together reviewing class feedback. They had become unlikely friends through their shared work. "We did something good here," Laura said. "We did something necessary," the general corrected. "But yes, also good." The program was no longer just about preventing future incidents. It had become about building something better. A military force where different species did not just coexist but truly learned from each other. And it had all started with 4 seconds and a broken wrist. The alarm woke Laura from deep sleep. Red lights flashed in her quarters as the emergency broadcast echoed through the station. "All combat-ready cadets report to Briefing Room 3 immediately. This is not a drill." Laura dressed quickly, her fingers working automatically on buttons and laces. 3 months had passed since the program began. She had hoped to finish her training quietly. Apparently, the galaxy had other plans. The briefing room was packed. 30 cadets stood at attention, their various breathing patterns creating a strange harmony. Commander Velith stood at the front beside a holographic display showing a sector of space near human-protected shipping lanes. "Listen carefully," Velith began. "We have received distress signals from 4 cargo vessels in the past week. Pirates are operating in this sector. They hit fast, steal cargo, and disappear before defense forces arrive. Command has decided to send a mixed-species cadet unit on a training mission. You will investigate a derelict freighter that stopped transmitting 6 hours ago." A Thraxian cadet raised one of his 4 hands. "Why send cadets? Why not regular forces?" "Because this is a learning opportunity. You will have full support from the station. Experienced officers will monitor everything. But you will make the tactical decisions." Velitha's eyes scanned the room. "Cadet Bennett will lead the human tactical element. General Krasthar will accompany as strategic advisor." Laura felt her stomach tighten. A real mission. Not a simulation or training exercise. The general stepped forward from the shadows. "You have trained together. Now you will see if that training has value beyond the classroom. Select your teams." 2 hours later, Laura stood in the shuttle bay wearing full combat gear. Her team consisted of 12 cadets. 4 humans, 3 Thraxians, 2 Quilarians, 2 Drachner, and 1 crystalline Sren who moved with careful grace. They had all completed her defensive tactics course and the general's strategic patience training. The shuttle ride to the derelict freighter took 40 minutes. Laura used the time to review the plan. They would board in 3 groups. Each group had mixed species to utilize different advantages. Thraxians provided heavy support and durability. Humans offered tactical flexibility and rapid decision-making. Quilarians gave them diplomatic options and sensory awareness. Drachner brought technical skills and their four-armed advantage for complex tasks. General Krasthar sat beside her, reviewing data on his personal display. "Nervous?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Laura admitted. "I have trained for combat. But this is real. People could get hurt." "They could. But you have prepared them well. Trust your training. Trust theirs." The freighter loomed ahead, dark and silent against the stars. Its running lights were dead. No response to hails. The shuttle docked with a metallic clang that echoed through both vessels. Laura's helmet display showed life signs aboard. 15 contacts clustered near the cargo bay. Too many for a standard freighter crew. Pirates definitely. Team Alpha with me through the main corridor. Team Beta take the port access. Team Gamma secure the bridge, Laura ordered. Her voice was steady despite her racing heart. They moved through the derelict in tactical formation. The Thraxians took point, their armored bodies serving as mobile cover. Humans stayed in middle positions, weapons ready but not aggressive. Quilarians monitored sensors, watching for ambushes. The first contact came suddenly. 3 pirates burst from a side corridor, weapons raised. They were a species Laura did not recognize, with gray skin and too many teeth. "Weapons down," Laura commanded. The pirates fired instead. Energy bolts struck the lead Thraxian's armor, leaving scorch marks but not penetrating. The Thraxian did not fire back. He simply advanced, using his body as a shield while Laura's team flanked around him. A human cadet named Wesley moved left, using the wall for cover. A Quilarian named Senna moved right, her slender form nearly invisible in the dim light. They created a crossfire position without firing a shot. The pirates realized they were surrounded. their weapons lowered slowly. "Smart choice," Laura said. On the ground, hands visible. They secured the 3 pirates with magnetic restraints and continued forward. Laura's mind worked through the tactical situation. 15 contacts total. 3 captured. 12 remained. They were likely grouped together for mutual protection. That created both a threat and an opportunity. "General," Laura said over the comm channel, "your assessment?" Crossthar's voice came back calm and measured. "The pirates are cornered. Cornered enemies are dangerous. But they are also desperate. They will want to negotiate. Give them that option before forcing confrontation." Laura nodded to herself. Strategic patience. Do not rush into combat when talking might work. They reached the cargo bay doors. Sensors showed all 12 remaining pirates inside, along with 2 hostages from the freighter crew. Laura signaled her teams to hold position. She activated the external speaker. "This is Cadet Laura Bennett of the Galactic Defense Force. You are surrounded. We have secured your escape routes. Release the hostages and surrender peacefully." A voice crackled back through the bay's speakers. "You're cadets. Kids playing soldier. We have hostages and enough weapons to turn this ship into scrap. Back off or they die." Laura glanced at the general. He made a small gesture. "Wait. You are right," Laura said calmly. "We are cadets. Which means we are monitored by full military support. Weapons platforms are targeting this vessel right now. If you harm those hostages, there will be nowhere in the galaxy for you to hide. But if you surrender, you face criminal charges, not execution. Live to face trial or die here. Your choice." Was a bluff. The weapons platforms were watching, but they would not fire with hostages aboard. But the pirates did not know that. Silence stretched for nearly 5 minutes. Laura counted her heartbeats. Beside her, the Thraxian cadet breathed slowly, his armor creaking softly. She could feel the tension in her team. Then the cargo bay doors opened a crack. A single pirate emerged, hands raised. "We want to negotiate terms." Over the next hour, Laura managed the standoff using everything she had learned. She gave the pirates small concessions. Time to discuss among themselves. Water and medical supplies for minor injuries. Each small gift reduced their fear and aggression. General Crosthar monitored from the shuttle, offering quiet advice. "You are building trust slowly. This is correct. Let them come to the decision themselves." Finally, the pirate leader agreed. They released both hostages unharmed. The pirates emerged one by one, weapons discarded, hands visible. Laura's team secured them efficiently, no violence needed beyond the restraints. When the last pirate was in custody, Laura allowed herself to breathe. Her teams had performed perfectly. Mixed species coordination, tactical positioning, strategic patience. Everything had worked exactly as trained. The shuttle ride back to Kepler 9 was loud with relief and celebration. Cadets who had never worked together before now laughed and shared the experience. The Thraxians praised the humans' quick thinking. The humans admired the Thraxians' physical courage. The Quilarians received compliments on their sensor work. Everyone had contributed something essential. Commander Velith met them in the docking bay. 0 casualties on either side. Hostages safe. Pirates in custody. This was textbook operation. Well done. Laura saluted. Thank you, Commander. The team performed excellently. The team had excellent training, Velith corrected. 3 weeks later, graduation day arrived. The ceremony was held in the main assembly hall, decorated with flags from every member species of the Galactic Defense Force. Laura stood with her class, wearing her formal uniform with new rank insignia. She had graduated top of her class in combined tactical operations. Admiral Chin presented the awards. When she called Laura's name, the applause was thunderous. Not just from humans but from every species present. "Cadet Laura Bennett," Admiral Chin said, handing her the medal, "for excellence in cross-species tactical coordination and for developing training protocols that will benefit the entire defense force." Laura accepted the medal and saluted. As she returned to her place, she passed General Crosthar. He stood at attention but clicked his mandibles in the Thraxian expression of pride. After the ceremony, Velith approached Laura with a data pad. "I have new orders for you. The integrated combat doctrine you and General Crosthar developed is being implemented across all Academy locations. You are assigned to the training command. You will spend the next year teaching instructors how to implement the program." Laura looked at the orders, her eyes wide. "Commander, I am just a newly graduated cadet. You are the person who started something important. Now you will help it grow. That evening, Laura found General Crosthar in the observation deck, watching the stars as she had months ago. "Congratulations on your graduation," he said as she sat beside him. "Thank you. And thank you for everything you taught me. Strategic patience. Long-term thinking. It saved lives today. You taught me equally valuable lessons. Tactical flexibility. Rapid adaptation. Together, we created something neither species could have made alone." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching distant stars wheel past. "Do you remember," Laura said quietly, "when you slapped me during that inspection? How could I forget? You broke my wrist in 4 seconds. I have been thinking about those 4 seconds a lot. They were the worst 4 seconds of my life at the time. I thought everything was over. And now," Laura smiled, "now I think they were the most important 4 seconds. They taught both of us that our assumptions about how things should work were incomplete. They forced us to learn from each other." The general clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. 4 seconds that changed everything. Perhaps that should be the title of the training manual we are writing. "Perhaps," Laura agreed. Below them, the station continued its endless rotation. Cadets from a dozen species trained together, learning the integrated approach that Laura and Crosthar had pioneered. What had begun as a cultural clash had become a bridge between worlds. Laura thought about her family back in Manchester. Her mum and brother who had taught her to stand up for herself. They had prepared her for this moment without knowing it. She made a mental note to send them a message. To tell them that their lessons had spread further than any of them could have imagined. "What are you thinking?" the general asked. "I am thinking that sometimes the best things come from the worst situations. That broken wrist led to all of this." "Indeed. Though I do not recommend breaking superior officers' wrists as a standard career strategy." Laura laughed. It was a sound that had become more common over the past months. "No, General. I will try to avoid that in the future." They stayed there for a while longer, two unlikely friends watching the galaxy turn. Behind them lay 4 seconds that had changed 2 lives. Ahead lay years of work, teaching others what those 4 seconds had taught them. That understanding between species required more than good intentions. It required willingness to learn, to adapt, to see the value in perspectives different from your own. And sometimes, it required breaking a few wrists along the way.